one memory of the workshop for sharing it is that we have on the one side people like you, Professor Lee, the scientists, deep knowledge, very passionate, must cooperate. You got on the other side the lawyers who says, this is what we can do, this is what we cannot do. And then we ask the policy analyst, what do we do now? Here, how do we bring together all of this, the scientific knowledge with the legal knowledge to do something concrete? So this is something that you have to bear in mind as this group here now wants to go into this sort of research on preservation of the marine environment. It's a very old marine problem, bringing very different kinds of knowledge. And on that note, I turn to our Indonesian colleague, Dr. Hendra Yusran Siry, who heads a key institute, the Coral Triangle Initiative. I think he will definitely appoint the Interim Executive Director to tell us about the problems of getting coral to grow here. Coral Triangle Initiative, coral reef, fisheries, food security, towards strengthening cooperation on managing high biodiversity marine resources for the Asia Pacific. Very scientific title, but basically I think they are going to tell us about rejuvenation of corals. Am I right?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you to President Wu, and thank you also to the organizer, National Institute of South China Sea Studies and Center of the National Strategy and Security, Tsinghua University, to invite the CTI CFF to be part of this important conference. This is our first time to be part of this conference, and specifically for myself, this is my first time to be in China. Allow me to introduce our organization. The Coral Triangle Initiative on Coral Reef Fisheries, Food and Security, or known as the CTI CFF, is a multilateral partnership of 6 countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Solomon Island, and Timor-Leste, working together to sustain extraordinary marine and coastal resources by addressing crucial issues such as food security, climate change, and marine biodiversity. We have been registered to the Secretary General of the United Nations in accordance with Article 182, the Charter of the United Nations, on 1 November 2017, which means that we are an international organization. The CTI CFF was founded in May 2009 in Manado, Indonesia, when the head of state of CTI CFF member state attended the CTI CFF summit and established the CTI CFF regional cooperation in Asia Pacific region. The Coral Triangle is a geographic term that refers to the roughly triangular area of the tropical marine waters of eastern part of Indonesia, eastern part of Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Solomon Island, and Timor-Leste, representing the custodian of the Coral Triangle area. So this is the red one. You can see that looks like triangles actually. It is demarcated by the scientific boundary, which of course the highest diversity of coral species and reef species in the world, and is located at the confluence of Western Pacific and Indian Oceans. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, Coral Triangle region has about 4.4 million hectares of reef, which home more than 500 corals and 3,000 fish species. We represent about 6% of the world coral reef species and 1/3 of total world coral reef area. Coral Triangle region also has 4.6 million hectares of mangrove. Named for its outstanding numbers of corals and abundant coastal ecosystem, the region nurtures 6 of the world's 7 marine turtle species and more than 80 charismatic and threatened species, which is also include the marine mammal that Professor Songhai already mentioned. we can find the most of sea crab species in the Coral Triangle region. It is important to undisputable it support and fuel economy of more than 130 million people living in coastal who rely directly on marine habitats. The Coral Triangle region provides spawning and nursery ground for tuna, which is support multi-billion tuna industry. It is also contribute to an estimate $2.3 billion each year towards the economies of the region. Its marine resources also provide the growing nurtures of tourism industry value at over $12 billion annually. The next two slides will explain more detail about the data that I mentioned. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the CTI CFF is committed to provide the enabling environment for better articulation and coordination among ocean, marine and coastal sustainable development advocate, as it serves its roles as a custodian of the global marine biodiversity. We work together with our member states through National Parenting Committee and supported by our development partners and collaborators. And our skeletal framework for the CTI CFF as follows. So the CTI CFF operates through the co-decision making and implementing body, including CTI CFF Council of Ministers and the CTI CFF Committee of Senior Officials and the CTI CFF National Parenting Committee, all which are supported by the CTI CFF Regional Secretariat. The CTI CFF Council of Ministers is the highest formal decision-making body of the initiative that meets regularly and has the power to adopt and approve the CTI CFF resolution at ministerial meetings. Each minister has the primary agency tasked to implement the CTI Regional Plan of Action in their respective countries. The chairmanship of the CTI Council of Ministers rotated among the 6 countries and has a fixed term. The CTI Committee of Senior Officials is composed of designated senior government officers from the 6 Coral Triangle countries who are asked to oversee and decide the technical decision of the CTI CFF as well as provide direction to the Regional Secretariat. The senior officials meet annually and as needed to ensure that the business of the CTI CFF is carried out efficiently. The CTI NCC, National Parenting Committees, are the National Interagency Committee responsible for guiding and ensuring implementation of the CTI Regional Plan of Action in their respective countries. They are composed of officials from designated government agencies, representatives and NGOs, and academic institutions that meet regularly and decided on the priority CTI CFF activities. CTI NCC members also represent their countries in CTI CFF Technical Working Group and regional CTI meeting. The CTI NCCs are based in government agencies, work with various development partners who are implementing the CTI CFF activities at national and local level, and also conduct outreach and communication activities. The CTI CFF Regional Secretariat is the primary body to coordinate and implement of the CTI Regional Plan of Action. The Regional Secretariat coordinate and support official meetings, events being implemented under the CTI CFF RPOA roadmap. These include the annual high-level CTI CFF senior official meeting, ministerial meeting, and periodic meetings and workshops organized by the technical working group. The Regional Secretariat also provide technical and coordination support to NCCs on emerging opportunities and priority related to reaching the goals and target of the CTI CFF Regional Plan of Action. In addition, the Regional Secretariat serves as a primary communication platform for the CTI CFF. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, the work of the CTI CFF in the past years has contributed to and continue to contribute to the sustainable oceans, particularly on the increased spatial coverage and effectiveness of marine and coastal protected areas in coral reef and closely associated ecosystems. Management of coastal development, improved reef-based socio-ecological system within the local context, integrated watershed and marine management and capacity building. The work of the CTI CFF has guided the Regional Plan of Actions, which has been implemented into 5 goals. Priority seascape are designated and effectively managed. Second, an ecosystem approach for fisheries management and other marine resources is fully applied. Third, marine protected areas are established and effectively managed. Fourth, climate change adaptation measures are achieved, and the last, the status of threatened species is improved. These goals are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals number 2, 5, 13, 14, and 17, and resonated with the goals of the UN Decade of Ocean for Sustainable Development. The RPOA is essentially implemented through the 5 technical working group, which mirror the RPOA goals and comprise technical experts from both countries and development partners organizations, as well as specialists from the other stakeholder organization, institution, and group. RPOA implementation is also supported by 3 set cross-cutting action, including coordination mechanism and implementing partners, financial resources, and monitoring and evaluation. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, the CTI CFF is on its way to renewing the regional plan of action. We call this RPOA 2.0 to support the need for change and build accomplishment for the past decade. Furthermore, it takes strategic advantage for any regional and global driver which are emerging and which might generate a positive influence on and impact on the future developments of CTI goals. As the CTI move toward RPOA 2.0 for the next 10 years, we will ensure that the need for and the role of the ocean seas coast is considered in the implementation of RPOA 2.0. Especially in the area of the research, engagement, communication, capacity building, training, and education, as well as resources mobilization. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude my presentation that Coral Triangle countries are committed to continue action to create real change and work together to sustain auxiliary marine coastal resources by addressing crucial issues such as food security, climate change, and marine biodiversity. We welcome any support and collaboration with like-minded organizations in global, regional, and national to align and integrate the effort with the concept and application of conservation, sustainable development of oceans, seas, coastal, and resources. Thank you. Terima kasih. Mari selamat. Thank you. Obrigado. Thank mas. CJ.
I'd like to thank Hendra for introducing us to the work of the Coral Triangle Initiative and to our Chinese host for inviting you to do so. I think your institute has been doing magnificent great work together with the other one, MC, in the Philippines. And I'm not sure how many of us here until today are familiar with the Coral Triangle Initiative and your work. Certainly at that CSCAP working group that I have to co-chair, even our Filipino colleagues who are from the foreign ministry, like so many other CSCAP, what is this? Wow, we got MC in Manila, I didn't know about all of that. So here we got very deep silos of knowledge here. Foreign affairs officers who are concerned with these issues, scientific community, institutional community. The challenge is how do we bring together these different knowledge here. You can see from Hendra's presentation that within the Coral Triangle Initiative, they have done the research. They have got the records. It's how do we get it out and make it relevant to policy research. And on that note, I turn to my Filipino colleague, Rafael and Mohan, to wrap it all up and tell us what we can do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and the organizers. Let me point out that my presentation will be on implementing common commitments for cooperation in the South China Sea region. And this is one of those issues that should make Dr. Wu happy, because this is one which is not complicated by competition between China and the US. What does this mean? It means that if we fail, we only have ourselves to blame. The overarching principles of sustainable development and cooperation under a rules-based order are existing, and we need to take steps in order to implement these common commitments. If you recall, for those who have been here, 3 or 2 years ago, Vice Minister Li of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and underlined, I think a year ago, by Ambassador Yi Xiangyang, that there is a legal obligation to cooperate among the states in semi-enclosed seas under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And the duty to cooperate in a semi-enclosed sea covers 3 indispensably related areas: management of living resources, protection and preservation of the marine environment on which the living resources depend, and marine scientific research, which underlines a science-based approach to the preceding 2 activities. And the purpose, therefore, is to achieve cooperation in the South China Sea region in order to be able to strengthen and perhaps institutionalize habits of consultation and dialogue. Now, last year, I did introduce the Sustainable Development Goals into the discussion, because this was unanimously adopted by all our countries in the United Nations in 2015. And Goal 14 is about conserving and sustainably using the oceans, seas, and marine resources for development. Now, under Goal 14, we have very specific targets. And let me just remind you that by 2020, we must conserve at least 10% of coastal and marine areas. And the other targets by 2020 include regulate harvesting and end overfishing, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and destructive fishing practices, and implement science-based management plans, as well as to prohibit certain forms of fisheries subsidies which contribute to overcapacity and overfishing. Now, the targets and indicators that were subsequently developed by the UN statistical bodies indicate that these are consensus areas which can be pursued in more applicable terms at the level of the semi-enclosed sea like the South China Sea. While the Sustainable Development Goals are voluntary and legally non-binding, they not only set out a collective plan of action for the states around the South China Sea, but acquire a more binding nature when seen in the context of the duty to cooperate among states bordering semi-enclosed seas. Now, let me point out as well that this is not the only international commitment or treaty under which such an obligation is found. Under the Convention on Biodiversity, which has been ratified by all of the countries in the South China Sea region, we are committed under the Aichi targets that by 2020, at least 10% of the coast